Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Either Steve and I are going to be best friends tonight, or we're going to be
Oh god. I'm interested to see where we land, because we all know Tom is a very divisive figure, so let's go ahead and get started then. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Pardew. Joining me today is...
I guess a geek for fun.
And a Steve for fun.
And finally, the Vacuuminator has returned to Geeky Gentlemen. I've been holding that in all day.
That's fine.
I love the enthusiasm. 10 out of 10.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, so Vac's back. Back again. Vac is back. Tell a friend. That Vac is back. Anyway.
No, I have made that joke so many times, man.
It's just the like rhyming structure of it. Anyway.
It's so easy.
So yeah, we got Vac here because we're talking about a Supergirl thing, so therefore Vac heard the call from the depths of the wilderness and trekked across miles and mountains all just to be here, right?
I like how you word it that way, when in reality, I beat down your door the second the first issue dropped, and I was like, if you talk about this book, I'm coming on the show!
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So we're talking about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. This is the Tom King, and I'm a total comic book expert because I've forgotten the name of the artist.
Elquist Evely.
Elquist Evely series. It's an 8-issue. Well, like if a 12-issue is a maxi series and a 4-issue is a mini series, what the fuck's an 8-issue?
A macro series?
Sure. So yeah, with this 8-issue series that follows Supergirl on this adventure with a young alien girl from a planet. She is a rock farmer, and her father was killed by some fucking asshole of the Yellow Hills.
Rem of the Yellow Hills.
Yeah, sure, that one. It's been like 2 weeks since I've read the book. Sorry. And this is the story of their journey to find this guy and the things they find along the way. So I think is it safe to say everyone here is a Tom King fan? Does everyone here like Tom King or at least appreciate Tom King?
Tom King is the best writer in modern comics, bar none.
Tom King is the greatest writer working at DC today, potentially the greatest comic book writer of our time.
I like the cut of his jet.
Tom King can do no wrong. I'm here for it.
I'm not quite that enthusiastic. There are little hiccups in his career for me, but generally I love his stuff.
Okay. All right. So, Man, I almost feel like I should invite someone on that just fucking has a passionate hatred for Tom King. You know, just need to find, like, the nearest Twitter person.
I don't think they actually exist. I think they're all bots.
Yeah, maybe. He's a very divisive figure, and it was funny for me reading this one, because I'm curious, I think, the most about Vac's opinion on this one. So I'm gonna pose a question pretty much right out the gate here. But I'm going to tell a story first. So, it's been a couple years, but Steve had us review Omega Men on this podcast. And Omega Men was, of course, like one of Tom King's big, like, breakout things for DC. That got a lot of push, a lot of popularity for something that probably shouldn't have. And that was a story about Kyle Rayner, and it was like a war allegory for just so much shit. That's a deep, deep story. and I remember in the review, I was like, yeah, it's a good story, but like as a Kyle Rayner fan, I'm not entirely comfortable with what this does to Kyle Rayner's like future to put him through such trauma on such like a real level. And by real I mean in like the context of real world events affecting Kyle Rayner in this way. But also too, just like this, it's kind of using, in my opinion, it was using Kyle Rayner more as a vehicle to tell a separate story as opposed to telling a story about Kyle Rayner. And so I don't know if I think this has the same thing going on in it, but I definitely had a very similar reaction. Like that thought kind of occurred to me. I was like, I don't know if this is really a Supergirl story, if this is just a story that's got a very particular message that is using Supergirl to tell that story. Which I understand is probably a pretty minuscule distinction, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on in that regard, Vac.
Okay, so I've been a Supergirl fan since I was about 10, 11 years old. I'm currently 25. And I use absolutely no hyperbole when I say I have never in my life read a Supergirl story that I felt understood the character exactly the way I feel I do until this comic. It is intrinsically a Supergirl story. It cuts right to the heart of who she is and what she's about and the pathos that comes with that. And I am so thankful that this exists.
Awesome. Well, then I guess it would be a good time to go kind of around the table here and see what everyone else's general thoughts are on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Steve, you're the one that... Or no, wait, I chose this, didn't I? I forgot. Steve, you're the one that's like worships the ground Tom King walks on. What do you think of Woman of Tomorrow?
I think this one's really, really good. Tom King used to have like distinct eras and trilogies in his work, and Supergirl is the first book that kind of breaks away from that, and it's kind of geared more towards what he's been doing now. What he used to have like the first big three things he did were Sheriff of Babylon, Omega Men, and The Vision, and those were supposed to be the trilogy of best intentions, where the thematic idea behind all 12 issues of each story was someone going into a situation with the best of intentions and hopelessly fucking them up to the worst possible degree. Then he had that sort of PTSD era where we got Batman, Heroes in Crisis, and Mr. Miracle, which is essentially a response to that first series where he's basically saying, what does the trauma of that going through that first experience do to you in the present, and how do you get through it? And then the third one is kind of wonky, and this is where Supergirl bridges the gap from the third to the modern era, because the third one was supposed to be like this political response to what was going on at the time. And so you had Rorschach on one end and Strange Adventures on another, both really politically charged books, both really intensely in the moment that kind of had to wrap up and go towards into COVID era stuff. And Batcat was supposed to be in that too, but Batcat got so derailed from just delays over and over that it kind of loses that thread. So by the end, those three don't kind of amount to that same trilogy, even though Strange Adventures and Rorschach are brilliant, brilliant books. And so at the tail end of that, we announced that he's doing Supergirl, and Supergirl is supposed to lead into the fourth era, and it comes out at the same time as the third era is going on because of all the delays and because of COVID. So it kind of blurs that line to the point where it just doesn't exist anymore, and now he doesn't seem to be kind of bouncing from idea to idea as much as he's just kind of bouncing from book to book. So you've got this, you've got Human Target, you've got Gotham City Year One that's about to start up, you've got Danger Street, you've got all these books that are kind of doing very different things, and they're not speaking to each other in the same way that the other books were. And this is also one of the first times he's not done a 12-issue miniseries, not because he didn't pitch it as a 12-issue miniseries, but because DC said no one's going to buy Supergirl after 8 issues. So literally what he's talked point blank about the idea that, like, look, Supergirl #1 will sell really well. You are never going to get this book off the ground if you ask someone to wait 12 issues. And I think in hindsight, as misogynist as that ended up being, I think in hindsight it was probably the right decision, because Tom King's really good at the 12-issue maxi series, but making him play with the format, I think, almost makes him a much better storyteller. His short stories, his 8-pagers, are some of the best things he's ever done. Anytime he's kind of breaking that mold a little bit and having to force himself to either be tighter or looser, he's always brings out a lot more creativity. So like Batman Killing Time, 6-issue miniseries, that book is absolutely incredible. So doing in 8 issues, I think you notice bits in Supergirl where if this was a 12-issue miniseries, these slight asides to what they're talking about would have been their own issue. And condensing them down and making each issue focus more on a different emotional roller coaster for the characters to get over, and almost making them one and dones that have a thematic through line to the end, I think works a lot better, and works a lot better in 8 issues. Bilquis Evely's art is absolutely incredible. She is absolutely the star of this show with this book. It's so fucking gorgeous, and it doesn't look like anything else that Tom King's ever been a part of, because it doesn't have the same sort of like rigid panel layouts that everything else he does has. There are some 9-panel grids in this, but they're not like the language of the book overall. This is probably the most experimental thing he did at the time. And he's since done more creative things going forward here. But as like a breath of fresh air, the first issue of Supergirl was like the best first issue he'd written in years at that point. This series is really, really good. I love it. I think it's not my personal favorite Tom King. It probably doesn't make the top 5, but it's up there for sure.
All right, and Alfie, Mr. Quiet for Fun, what did you think of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow?
I love this book. This book is probably the only other super-related piece of content I think you could make an argument, and a very strong argument at that, for being better than All-Star, or if at the very least on par with it. And the fact that we got that for Kara kind of out of nowhere is just... it's so good. This book is probably one of the most gorgeous books I've ever seen in my life. I love every single page of this. I spent like hours making a fan art of this book with Kara, because I love how she's drawn in this so much, like the definitive art style look for Kara. How the action done in this is fantastic. How the alien and world designs are done in this and is fantastic. The coloring by Mafus Lopez, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, please forgive me, is just phenomenal and complements the art so well. Literally, basically every page in this book could be like a phone wallpaper or like put in the Louvre. Like, this is just so gorgeous. But then outside of that, once you get to Tom King's script, I think this really brings out the best in him as a writer, to where this is my favorite Tom King work, where he gets to be in the trenches of it. He gets to go and show you how truly bleak the universe can be sometimes. He gets to really drag you through the mud, but he also gets to be really, really funny, but he also gets to be really whimsical and kind of play up a side of himself that I don't think gets explored enough for him as a writer. Like, we got a little bit of an Omega Man, but ever since he started going back to Earth and doing more kind of serious crime drama stuff, is like Tom King's really good at like the Silver Age premise, at just like the crazy emotional premise that reveals the insights of our characters, but on the surface level is like Batman fighting a dragon, like in a way where a lot of other writers have that sharp disconnect when they go so serious street level. Because he's not doing it in the same way Morrison is doing it, where Morrison wants you to believe in the reality of that world. Tom King almost always in his captions will kind of acknowledge the absurdity of what you're seeing, but then in that caption he'll also then make you cry about it and make it your new favorite thing ever. And that's a strength of Tom King that he's getting to kind of marry right now with Human Target, with his street level kind of noir crime stuff, is that's got like a lot of cool, weird kind of Silver Age concepts in it. But this is where I really think he got to stretch his legs and be cosmic fun adventure. Yeah, it's as heartfelt and as real about trauma and how we move on and how we try to be better, and how even the best of us, when faced with just pure, unadulterated evil, can falter. But still, if we've got other people beside us who believe in us, we can endure and we can stay true to our principles and we can be better for it. Like all of that is so good. So yeah, I'm in love with this book in every single part of its craft. I feel like if I was teaching a class on comics, this would be one of them. This is very close, if not a perfect book for me.
Alrighty. I liked it. It was alright. Everyone else is like, oh, this is like such a perfect book, and this is like defining a generation. I'm like, yeah, it was okay. I don't really have much authority to talk here, but I will say, like, I don't particularly care for King's voice for Supergirl. It just isn't what the take I really associate in my head. It's probably because I haven't, like, consumed a lot of Supergirl media. I think my, like, biggest influence on my interpretation of Supergirl is probably Bruce Timm and the DCAU, which probably not the best thing ever given the way they treat every other character besides Batman, but you know, it kind of is what it is. So like just kind of fighting against that thing. She's a lot more like hard-edged in this than I think I've ever seen her before. And so if the Supergirl fan here says, no, this is the best take on her ever, and I'm kind of like, yeah, well, I'm not going to argue that then, but it just didn't gel with what I was used to. So there was like an initial hurdle getting over that. What's the name of the girl in this? The Rufai. I liked her a lot. She was a lot of fun. And like it's funny in reading the Supergirl book, I identify more with the, you know, essentially side character / main character of the story, but like the non-important to the DC universe character. And like I just loved the way that for as much shit as Tom King got, in particular in Batman, but it also kind of extended out to Mr. Miracle and stuff, of just not actually doing any writing and just having characters say the same 3 sentences over and over. I did feel like a little bit of like, well, I'll fucking show you who can write. It's just having her go on for fucking days about like, hey, get off of my seat. This is my seat on the airplane. Get off of my seat. So like that was pretty funny. I quite enjoyed her just incredibly verbose dialogue and narrations. That was a lot of fun. Tom King has this thing with like framing devices that I'm not sure if they ever quite pay off the way he intended them to, or if he just like if he like forgot that he did them and then remembered at the end, and it just feels kind of weird. Because I've talked about this a lot with people, and that I've fallen off of comics hard. I haven't been reading hardly anything lately, and it's because I just don't have the fucking time. But one of the more recent things I read is while I was waiting on something one day at my local library, I picked up I Am Gotham again, and I reread it. And I forgot that story fucking ends with, I think it's Duke or Gotham Girl's narration about, like, years later, after the wedding. It's just this, like, seemingly dropped plot thread that I don't...
To be fair, that was not a Tom King plot thread that got dropped. That was a DC did not let him finish his story problem.
Yeah, it's just a funny thing.
But I do love how in that run, it's like every 10 issues he goes, and Duke is also here. He will not do anything, though.
That's entirely Scott Snyder's fault.
Yeah,
yes.
it's just funny how there's like that one, and then this starts off with like, and then Supergirl pulled the sword out of him, and like all this. I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this again. Where it's just like this plot thread that, like, in all fairness, this one definitely gets more stuff wrapped up about it than the other one did, but it was just very amusing to see that happen again. And I just had that little moment of, is it actually gonna get the follow through this time or not? Because I had to do a double take.
That's really interesting for me to hear, because I would actually argue that the through line is the most prevalent it's ever been in a Tom King run, because so much of this book is just Rufai's narration, which is supposed to be her book that she ends up writing. And literally the last page of this comic is the last, like, I would assume, page of her book.
No, I agree. This one definitely gets, like, resolved. It was, again, just the fact that, like, I had to do a double take and sit there and go, wait, is it going to get resolved this time? Because I just immediately thought back to I Am Gotham.
You're talking about that moment when she says she wished she had ended the book the way it actually ended. Excuse me.
No, I'm talking about just, like, at the end of chapter 1 where she's like she just spoils the ending, basically, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I sat there and was like, wait, is this actually gonna happen this time? It was just funny, just like a funny little my own personal experience reading the thing. No, but, like, again, I don't think I'm gonna sit here and say that I think anything of it is bad. I think there are some really great and fantastic ideas, and, like, the Kryptonite sun is fucking cool as shit. There's a lot of cool stuff in here that I did really, really enjoy. But ultimately, for me, I can definitely tell by, like, the tone everyone else is discussing this with. This was not, like, a revelation or, like, a top 10 comics of all time thing for me. I thought this was, strictly speaking, pretty good to okay. So that's kind of where I'm at on it, at least initially. Maybe someone will say some, like, crazy shit that makes me go, oh, I see, but who knows?
So something about what you were saying about the Supergirl's voice, which I think might be interesting to discuss here, especially if you have someone that does actually read a lot of Supergirl, because that's certainly not me.
I have a thing to say, but you go first.
All right. I'll be curious to hear your response to this. But so the thing about this book is Tom King said that he got offered essentially to do the Supergirl book because they needed some way to, like, kind of relaunch it and make it appeal to more people. So they put their DC's biggest writer on it, and then they gave him the 8-issue restriction and everything, and he didn't really have, like, a take on Supergirl. So he, like, went back and read a bunch of old Silver Age Supergirl books, and Tom King is really obsessed with comics history. So he's read, like, a lot of biographies and stuff about old comics creators. The guy who created Supergirl, his name is Otto Bender. And there's a really interesting through line between Otto Bender's life and this Supergirl book, and Otto Bender's life as it's paralleled in Rorschach that was coming out around the same time, because he shows up in both books. But Otto Bender is really interesting because Otto Bender created Mary Marvel for the Captain Marvel universe over at Fawcett Comics. And then DC was like, okay, this character is doing really well. We need to create something like that. So we need a Supergirl. We need a Miss Marvel ripoff. So they hired Otto Bender, who created Mary Marvel, to create a Mary Marvel ripoff who ended up becoming Supergirl. And the thing about Supergirl that's really fucked up is that Otto Bender had a daughter, this, like, beautiful blonde-haired daughter, that died in, like, a truck accident. And Supergirl was created basically as an homage to her, and he spent basically the entire rest of his life depressed about her. And if you go and read the original Supergirl issues where she first shows up by Otto Bender, the origin of it is extremely traumatic because, like it goes through in issue 6 of this book, she goes from her planet exploding to being rocketed away to people dying of cancer to people dying of cancer again and being rocketed away again. So she goes through multiple Holocaust-y style events before she lands on Earth. And according to King, the thing that makes Supergirl really interesting is that unlike Clark, who got to have, like, a happy upbringing and doesn't have any sort of connection to the trauma of Krypton, Supergirl lived her entire adolescent life in it. So she's going to naturally have a harder edge to it, which is why he decided to write her as someone that's a little bit more stern, someone that people want to fuck with Superman, so they go after Supergirl, not realizing that you don't fuck with Supergirl. So that whole thing is really, really interesting. And then paralleling what he does with Otto Bender's creation of Supergirl in this book, of turning it into kind of like the ultimate inspirational story, into what he does with Otto Bender as a person in the Rorschach book, where it becomes the most fucked up comics will steal your soul thing ever, is really fascinating when you put them next to each other.
I mean,
it really is.
I think that's certainly fair to say that the taking the literal original origin for Supergirl and using that to craft a much harder character is, I think, a certainly valid choice. Again, it's just not the thing that I am used to or like the voice I have in my head. And I think there's, like, That's something interesting that always happens in comics where someone will do a thing that kind of calls back to a much earlier era before like certain things had become attached to a character or what have you. And it's like, yes, this interpretation, this move is perfectly valid. It doesn't change the fact that that's not necessarily what that character has been in at least modern memory, or arguably in some cases in the majority of their run. Right? It'd be like, it's like when fucking people try to justify the Zack Snyder or Tim Burton movies, like, well, Batman killed in the original comics. Well, yeah, but that's not really what Batman's been known for ever fucking since. So you're technically right, but also, come on. And I don't think this is nearly as bad as that. I just think that's kind of that similar kind of vibe that I'm running into on a personal level.
Ian,
Well, I think that's.
I gotta say,
Go
you've got me like bursting like a YouTube commenter over here to fucking. I'm not me. I don't mean I want to tell you off, but like, okay, let me think for a second. I have to start this with something that's gonna sound like a non sequitur. So famously, the almost always go-to voice actor for Optimus Prime, Peter Cullen, describes the character as when he went out for the role originally, his brother, who had served in the army, gave him some advice, and that advice was, don't be a TV hero, be a real hero. Sound like you're strong enough to be gentle. And that has always been his core understanding of Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime is strong enough to be gentle. And I kind of apply that same methodology to Supergirl, and I think King does too, because with that whole re-exploring of the original origin in this book, I took that as very much Supergirl is the strongest being in the universe. She is stronger even than Superman because of certain key differences in their upbringings, and not just stronger physically, but stronger emotionally. She is strong enough to take on the burden of losing her world multiple times within like the same month when she's 14 years old. And think about yourself when you were 14. You were a much different and much more volatile person than you probably are right now. She was strong enough to go through all that and come out the other side and become Supergirl. Become a character that is famous for being light and bubbly and kind. Because when we think about Supergirl, and I think that's kind of what you're hitting at, Ian, with you don't like the voice for her in this comic, we think about Supergirl as just kind of your average teenage girl, but with superpowers. You know, she's kind of interested in vapid things, but she does have a serious edge to her, and she just wants to do right and be a good person, and she's nice. Supergirl is nice, is I think what a lot of people would describe her as. But the fact is, she's that way because she knows just how bad things can be. And her methodology for life, I've always thought, is I can't. It's almost similar to Batman, where it's like, I don't want anyone else to go through anything remotely that bad, so I'm going to take these powers and do everything I can to help people. And I think this book is very much about that.
I think that's all fair. Again, I'm not saying that I think it is a less valid interpretation. I just think it's that thing of you have certain ideas about characters in your head, and then things come around and do different takes on them, and sometimes those takes hit and knock it out of the park, and like it redefines the characters for you, and sometimes those takes just don't. And I'm just, as on a personal level, my experience with this book is this take just didn't hit for me. I just didn't feel the same way.
That is totally fair. Not everything's going to work for everybody, but I mean, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm trying not to sound hyperbolic on this episode because I really love this comic and I want to be here just to advocate for it. But it's hard not to say something like, I've read this book 6 times now, and I am so close to saying this is my favorite comic of all time. It's really hard for me not to take the New Frontier off that pedestal, because the New Frontier has been my favorite comic of all time since I was like 15.
Mm-hmm.
But man, this again, I'm just so thankful this book exists because it gets the character in a way for the longest time I thought only I did.
All right, Alpha, you were gonna say something earlier, and then kind of got stomped over.
Yeah, my apologies.
Alfie, Mr. Geek. Yes.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay, sorry about that. No, you're all good. I was just gonna say, kind of like, Steve and Fakade have gone very like, the take of the lore with the character Kara, and like why this is a new take, and so he's like, oh well, this is a different take of what I'm used to, stuff like that. I was just gonna argue with like, I think she's always been like this.
Okay.
Yeah!
I don't think this is a new. She's a Red Lantern, for God's sake, you know. Like, and I don't think that came out of nowhere either. The thing that Kara, that even in like the DCAU stuff, because I was watching those episodes, not recently, but a while ago, so they're pretty fresh in my memory. Is that she's always like, Clark, why aren't you more mad about this? I come to Earth, I was meant to protect you, and now I'm not, and now I've got these weird powers, and I don't understand what's going on, and I'm a young, like, teenage gal, so I'm already, like everything about the world at her is kind of, like, testing her to, like, snap, but she never does. Like, she can get angry, and that's kind of she's got an edge to her that Clark doesn't have, because she doesn't have that. And I like this with the Kryptonians as well, and the difference between Zod has this as well, where for Kara, she got powers when she landed on Earth. Clark doesn't think of them like powers. He's just born that way. So he's had a lifetime of restraint, of just understanding, like, I can't do this. And if you want to use a DCAU again, like that whole world of cardboard thing, right? Kara doesn't have that. She just got it and had to make a do. And how that goes about can have either bad results or good results. But she's got such a strength of character and a strength of will that's always kind of been consistent. That's what makes her Supergirl in a very different way than Clark, but leads to that end result of a inspiring, uplifting person. And what I really liked about this is, I think with the Tom King thing is, she gets to swear in this a little bit. She gets to be a little bit more coarse. She gets to drink. She gets to puke. But this is honestly one of the most uplifting takes on like a main character that I think Tom King's really good with superheroes in general, of always giving you those really gorgeous moments of just pure optimism. The fact that Kara teaches this gal how to wash her hands, the fact that Kara she goes inside that building with the horrors and stuff, and she holds it in, and she doesn't let Rufy go in, and she walks out. The many instances of her protecting this gal or saving that baby with that awesome I guess it's not a splash page, but like it's not covered 2 pages, but like that one panel where like she's holding the baby and Ruth's on that, like basically the cover intro page.
Digging the graves.
Yeah. So many moments of this give me that like very all-star moment of like, wow, you wrote just like a perfect super moment here. So even going outside of like talking about the characterization of Supergirl in this, I think the real strength of this book, in a way that goes along with the art, is making the super character feel worth the hype. Like, we often do these great speeches about Superman or Supergirl or Wonder Woman or Batman being like the greatest person in the universe, and other characters talking to them about like that. But this has a little bit of that, but mostly it's just Kara walking the walk. Mostly it's just her showing why she's so good and why she's so important, just through her actions of just her everyday existence, trying to go on this one single adventure and all these mythic, wonderful things she achieves. So then you get to imagine what the course of her life she does. I love all of that so much. So when you get to the end of that book, and I guess if anyone wants to read this book, and 3 out of 4 people are praising it to high heaven, and even the 4th person's like, no, it's good, it's fine. I think you're worthwhile to go read it. But like, once you get to the end, and Kara has that really beautiful moment of weakness where she's been put through the fucking ringer beyond anything, she comes down and she thinks basically all hope is lost, that everything she's tried on this journey just is worthless. She has that moment of where she considers just killing him, just taking him out right there and then. she gets saved by the thing that always saves the superhero people, the super people, the Kryptonians, the Owls, is the people they inspired, reminding them of themselves. And I'd kill for any number of moments of like with any of these characters, like that always hits for me so potently. And you get that montage of like the hand washing with Comet, with the dragon, the dinosaur, the graves, all of it building up to why do these caped figures matter? Like, why do we talk about Superman and Supergirl? Why do they have a different aura to them? What's the point beyond them just punching good? And I think Tom King, next to Morrison, is probably the best writer in terms of actually articulating why they're different, why they are the it factor of the entire DC universe, why these figures can save us in a way that no one else can. And then you get that moment, like, I still dream of Krypton. Like, tears, man, tears. Like, it actually legitimately moved me.
There's several moments in this book that make me cry, but that one especially, because it's also calling back to the first time Tom King wrote Supergirl in Heroes in Crisis. Does anybody remember that page?
Yeah, the confessional.
Mm-hmm. I swear, I read that page and I instantly knew Tom King understood Supergirl. And I didn't even dare to hope that this book could happen or that any Tom King Supergirl book could happen. And then when this book got announced, I remember I just stood looking at my phone in shock for about 5 minutes straight. And then I sent it to my my co-host on my comic book podcast, and he was just like, "So where the hell did you find a monkey's paw to wish on?"
Yeah, the issue where they recap Krypton and Supergirl's origin, issue 6, I think, where you're just going through trying to understand what exactly she lost. And Tom King does a really good job of setting this up because there's all those sporadic moments throughout their journey early on where Ruthie will say something that in the narration she'll walk back because at that point in time, whatever outburst she was having, she didn't have the context for what Kara had been through. And then you get to that issue where they tell the full story, and it might just be one of the best like single issues of anything DC has published in the last couple of years. It's so good. It's such a beautiful recap of the origin. It's such a beautiful articulation of like what makes Supergirl and super characters in general so inspirational. And I think it's a really good thesis statement for the whole book, because if you look at the way Morrison lays out All-Star Superman, which is basically the 12 labors of Hercules except it's Superman, you're essentially do the exact same thing here with Supergirl, where it's just kind of the 12 labors of Supergirl in that same format. But I think the sort of key difference between how King writes versus how Morrison writes is Morrison's really attached to these characters as mythic ideas, as expressions and abstractions in like really specific ways. And I think Tom King remembers that they're also just people and they go through shit too and they feel things like actual people do. And so you get like this grand cosmic history of what Supergirl's origin is, but there's so much focus on the reactions and so much focus on the facial expressions and how this plays to the person you're seeing right now, that it just hits on a completely different level. Like, it's not just a sad origin, it's a sad origin in front of a person that just seems incredibly strong. That whole thing works really well. And I remember when this book got announced, people were making jokes about how, oh great, Tom King's going to turn Kara into a war criminal. And he actually addressed that in an interview once where he's like, no, I don't like Supergirl because she's a war criminal. I like her because she's a survivor. And I think that does kind of just sell the whole book on its own.
So I have to say, I love that he kind of tries to fake everybody out with what happens to Crypto in this book.
Oh, that's great. That's hilarious. That's fantastic.
And people can fact check this because I talked about this book issue by issue on my comic podcast. Does anybody mind if I just say the name real quick?
Don't you dare plug yourself. What kind of fucking show do you think I'm running here?
Everybody go check out the No Prize podcast. It airs live every Sunday night. It's myself and Boingo Writer discussing the MCU and everything happening in the greater comic book world within the week. And usually towards the end of the show, actually always towards the end of the show, we talk about all the books we've read that week. And so I talked about this issue by issue because we started doing that show, I want to say 4 months before this book started. And when the first issue came out, I dead ass thought Tom King killed Krypto. I talked about the entire first issue, and I was like, this book is so great, this is going to happen. And Tom King killed Krypto. Nobody be mad. Tom King killed Krypto. I'm sorry, I have to bear the bad news, but he did that. And then I had to walk it back to next episode.
Don't
and be
worry,
like, no, Krypto's
we
poisoned.
can still be mad at Tom King because he killed Comet, the super horse that's not actually a horse.
Okay, but honestly, who gives a fuck about Comet the Super
I mean,
Horse?
I'm
and
sure
I'm saying
there's-
it as a Supergirl fan.
Well, he also killed Guy Gardner this year, so you know, at this point,
And nothing of value was lost.
I don't know. Like I was shocked to see Comet the Super Horse show up in the year of our Lord 2022, and I was also shocked to see that they actually kept. No, it's a fucking dude.
It's the pre-crisis Comet back from non-existence because there is a post-crisis Comet, and we don't talk about him.
You know what was funny is fucking follow this guy on Twitter, Adam, who makes Max, Max, the guy who makes comics about comics, and I think my favorite joke of his ever is, you think Supergirl wears a horse girl t-shirt, like just around.
She would if she was a little younger, but it's not her current dress sense, I think.
So funny.
oh my god. Yeah, it's cool to see Comet, but I guess it also tracks that he would use a pre-crisis character if he's going for the pre-crisis origin too.
Mm-hmm. Like, here's the thing. Before this book came out, I used to recommend people New 52 Supergirl all the time, because, like, that is the best Supergirl ongoing, in my opinion. It is a good, continuous story. There's rarely any bad issues, and the voice for the book feels consistent, even though the writer changes, like, almost every trade. But I love that he just paves over the New 52 origin with this book.
What's the New 52 origin?
It's very similar to the classic one, but her trip to Earth was more immediate. She was
okay, so that's New 52,
basically,
where she just instantly goes from Krypton to Earth. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, the planet's exploding, and her dad goes to shove her in a pod, and he hadn't told her mom, and her mom got really mad about it, and they got in a big fight and accidentally shot each other right as the pod was closing. So that's her trauma in the New 52.
That's so New 52.
Yeah.
That is pretty bad, honestly.
Also, her dad becomes New 52 Cyborg Superman.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, anything's better than Hank Henshaw, so I'll take that.
Mm-hmm. I did like that story. That's one of the few arcs of the Rebirth book I like, because the Rebirth book is majorly bullshit.
I'm sorry.
It happens.
I like Supergirl
like
and
that.
Bombshells.
You like everything in Bombshells.
Because it's objectively great.
Let me ask you, is there anything you don't like in Bombshells?
I'm a little on the fence about whether or not I'm okay with making Edward Nygma either just straight up a Nazi or a Nazi sympathizer. I think that's like a...
Fair
it's
enough.
like anytime you do that with like World War II set characters and you have like them, the heroes are fighting Nazis and then you take like their regular rogues gallery and like make them either helping Nazis or Nazi sympathizers. I'm a little like, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I like that idea. It's not that you can't make it work, and I mean, like, I fucking did it myself, so I don't have a ton of room to talk, but I don't know, it's just
you saying that just made me realize if Marvel ever does a World War II period piece book, like not like one that's set in the main universe, because the main universe exists in World War II as well. If Marvel did like a flashback, everything that's current about the Marvel universe happens during World War II kind of book, they'd make J. Jonah Jameson a Nazi sympathizer.
I mean, probably.
And I would not be okay with that.
Spider-Man, get me pictures of the Nazis. Yeah, I don't know. It's It's always like a weird thing where I'm like, I don't know. I just always go back to that one Captain America Batman crossover thing where the Joker's like, wait, you're a Nazi? Yes, Joker, what's your problem? You kill people all the time. Yeah, I may be a criminal, but I'm an American criminal. I'm like, no, there's something to that.
10 moments in comic history.
Like, legit, there is something to that. It's so absurd and so ridiculous, but like, legit, it captures entirely an emotion and makes no logical sense whatsoever when you get right down to it, with the fact that, like, Joker on his own, if you were to, like, rack up all the bodies, has probably killed more people than Hitler, but I still hate Hitler more. Like, if they were actual people, I'd still hate Hitler more than the Joker.
Well, to be fair, Joker has killed them indiscriminately.
Yeah, and he's funny, so, you know, he's got that joke.
He's an equal opportunity genocide.
Yeah, you know,
But hey, speaking of genocide and eugenics and Holocaust, who wants to talk about issue 3?
Oh boy, that one was
yeah,
rough.
that was a heavy one.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see that that one work its way in there. Quick question, just because I'm a pretty good DC guy, but there's always fucking races I don't know about. The like villain group that our main antagonist joins up with, are they established in anything, or are they like Tom King creations?
I'm 95% sure they were made for this book.
Yeah, they are.
I think the only things based on previous continuity are Kara Crypto Comet, and the Kryptonite Sun planet is based on a Silver Age story, but it is not that planet.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know. I kind of like them as an evil race, because usually, like, your, like, generic space invader race is usually like the Kuns, or something in DC, where it's just, you got the Kuns and the Dominators, and they're just like, generic Chitauri invading New York level bad guys. So I was curious to see if this was something new, and it's kind of a clever new thing of, no, we're just going around the universe fucking shit up unless you pay us a lot of money, and even then,
I was honestly kind of worried you'd be mad about them. Like, I half thought you were going to be like, so why aren't the Guardians doing anything about these fucking dudes?
I mean, dude, these guys fucked up Supergirl. The Green Lantern Corps better fucking watch out. I'm just saying, man. To go to a point I kind of want to segue to something I really like that they do with those is, like, Tom King addresses, like, it's almost like he read my mind of, like, the botch fucking YouTube comment moment where he's like, yeah, so Superman versus anyone with guns, that's always going to be pretty boring, right? And, like, he has, like, them directly state that, but then he's just like, but then you learn a little thing about the universe, and yes, Superman and Supergirl may be able to hull stars across solar systems, but when there is not a super person around, the universe finds other ways of doing it. There will always be people stronger. He does the Dragon Ball thing of just being like, we don't need special gimmicks, we don't need kryptonite, we don't need all these fucking bullshit things. You can just write, they've got really, really strong guns.
Well, I mean, like, it just makes sense, right? Simple. Of, like, this is escalation, right? This is the idea of what do you need to invent a better gun? A bigger problem that requires one, right? So, of course, if Kryptonians are a thing, we've spent, 80 years watching Lex Luthor try to basically invent a gun good enough to kill Superman. You think he's the only one in the universe working on that problem?
I mean, Godzilla comes out of the ocean. Somebody's going to make an oxygen destroyer.
Yeah, no, I have absolutely no problem with that. And just the way it all worked, I was perfectly fine with that. I mean, it's just, it's funny that he goes through all that. It's like it's still basically just like, yeah, but they didn't, like, win for realsies. Like, they got real close. But it's just funny.
And they are going to dine out on that story for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't know. I liked them just as, like, a generic threat kind of thing. They could. I would not be surprised if that ends up being the most long-lasting thing from this book. Is just those guys.
Well, so far the only repercussion for it has been her costume change at the end of the book. Which, can I go on a little rant about that?
No.
Okay.
Go for it. It's fine.
So I've always felt Supergirl's costume design is really important to her character. Like, the fact that she wears a skirt is actually really important to conveying who she is. And that's a big part of why, among other things about that interpretation, even though I do like it, the new 52 costume is kind of garbage. The reason Kara wears a skirt is because it's supposed to convey that there is a sense of innocence and a need for growth about her. You know, she's Supergirl, she's not Superwoman. And I feel like a lot of people don't actually understand that, because I have seen way too many fan arts of like, oh, Supergirl flies by and you can just look right up her skirt. Isn't that hilarious and awful? And it's like, if you actually read a fucking Supergirl comic, you'd know she wears biker shorts under that thing. But this book, at the end of it, they play it like it's far in the future, and she's done a lot of growing, and she has the pants costume from the latter seasons of the CW show. And in this book, I'm actually okay with that, because again, it's in the far future. You can say at the end of this story, she has done all her growing and she's matured into Superwoman or whatever she would call herself at that point, and she's more of a complete person. But then you go and read Heroes in Crisis, or not Heroes in Crisis, damn it, Dark Crisis #2, and she's wearing that costume. And that really bugs me, because it's like, oh, did DC just go, well, Tom King wrote the definitive Supergirl book, so I guess we're just gonna not bother doing anything with her except having her be in team-ups from now on.
So I don't think they put that much thought into it. I think the character design got a lot of traction on Twitter, so they were like, oh, we'll just put them in the thing. And like, I agree with you that I prefer Kara with the skirt. I think that's just a better color balance. I think it looks cooler. But like, I get what you mean. It doesn't like, I don't think it's integral to the character in the same way, but I do understand like, it's weird, right? Because that was meant to signify, oh, it's far in the future, so to visually show that, let's give her a different costume. Which
and she's got shorter hair too.
Yeah, which I think is the intent of the book, right? It's just to show like it's meant to be a glimpse into hundreds of thousands of years, and then like just now she has it in mainline is a bit weird. It's like, well, why did she change costumes regularly off panel? Like,
I mean, granted, Tom King did say in interviews this is supposed to be in main continuity, but it still looks fake.
Yeah, but that would imply like main continuity, like in the future of main continuity.
Yeah. To be fair, Tom King does not seem to understand what is and isn't in main continuity with his books, because every time
every book for the last 2 years he's written is in mainline continuity, except for Rorschach.
Yeah, everything he's written is supposed to be in canon, but then what is in canon seems to be entirely dependent on whatever DC feels like doing. So, like, Human Target is in canon, but it's also can't be in canon, and it's the same with Batcat. So I would not take that too seriously. It's probably not in canon.
It also really doesn't help that DC is just in one of those places right now where a comic company goes, yeah, we're just going to let everybody tell their stories and you can work out a timeline in your head.
Which is fine by me. The problem is just most of it sucks.
Yeah, I'm with Steve on that. Good concept, bad execution.
Yeah, because I love all of the books that are doing that are good, like Detective, but then there were so many books that are doing that suck ass, like Nightwing.
I don't want to fight you, Steve, but I'm just going to say this real quick. I actually really like Nightwing right now.
Oh, I'm so
it's
sorry.
One of my favorite books going on right now. I know it's probably gonna really color your opinion of me going forward, but I love that book.
I would just like it when books are good.
Okay, so let's talk about this book then.
Hey, Steve, has there ever been a good Nightwing comic? I'm so used to you just bitching about Nightwing. I don't know if there's ever actually been a good Nightwing run.
There have been good Nightwing comics. They're just kind of very few and far between.
Okay. And I mean, it also doesn't help, getting back to the costume thing, it also doesn't help that the costume she's wearing for the majority of this book is the costume she's had since the start of Rebirth, which is also based off of the initial CW show costume. And in my opinion, it's the greatest costume design she's ever had. And it is, because I just realized I haven't said anything about the art this episode, but you guys have. It is drawn so beautifully by Belquist Evely in this book. Like, there's at least one panel every issue that every time I see it just makes my heart do a backflip. Like, if you don't think Kara Zor-El is the most beautiful woman in the DC universe, by the time you're finished with this book, you will.
I mean, depends what age she is, man.
She's 21.
She's 21 in this book.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I have a weird relationship with this kind of discussion because the thing is, I talk about how much I love Supergirl so much on my group channel, Modular Media, that it's become a meme amongst me and the other people on that channel that she's basically like an anime waifu to me. And there's always that discussion with anime waifus of, well, like, most of them are 14, so at a certain point in your life, it just becomes weird.
I think I'm just gonna argue it's weird to have an anime waifu. I'm gonna fucking throw down that gauntlet.
Anyway,
yeah, no, the art is,
no,
the art is
Alfie,
really, really good.
What is your opinion on waifus? This is the important conversation.
Alfie, do you own a body pillow, yes or no?
I have an actual wife, so I'm good.
Okay.
Fair enough. Some of us aren't that lucky.
So yeah, no, the art is really, really good. Bilquis Evely hasn't done anything that I'm aware of that's like this big, high profile before. She did an issue of Batman, not even a full issue. She did a short story on one of those Batman anniversary issues that was really fucking gorgeous too. That took place. It was like a medieval knights kind of story. I don't remember exactly what the context of that was, but she's got like a high fantasy vibe. She's done some stuff with the Neil Gaiman Sandman universe that have been expanded out. So like she's got that high fantasy style, and throwing that into a space epic to really marry those two really works. Like there's a moment in the second issue where the script literally just says Space Dragon, and she draws like the most majestic space dragon you have ever fucking seen in your life. It's really, really captivating, and it's incredible that this book came out on time with no delays, because DC tries to have like a decent number of these in the can to prevent books from getting delayed, but even that doesn't really stop Tom King books from getting delayed. Like Strange Adventures got delayed, Batcat got delayed, Target took a 6-month break. Like this is a rare exception where he's with a high-profile artist where every single month the book came out on time.
Well, apparently Belquist just has access to the fucking Speed Force, because I was listening to interviews with Tom King about this book to prep for this interview, and there's one he did like 2 weeks before the first issue came out, and he says in that like when he initially teamed up with her for it, because he didn't have an artist for like a little while, and then his editor just said, "How about Belquist?" and he sent back a gif of just somebody dancing with joy. When he initially sent her the first script, she was like, okay, this is great, but I'm also going to send you a mood board of just like the stuff I want to be able to draw. And if you can work with me on that, that would be great. So that moment you're talking about in issue 2 actually came about because he was like, it's just been a lot of talking so far. I need something cool for her to draw, and I don't exactly know what's going to happen in the next scene. I have an idea, but I don't know the impetus for it. And he was talking to his 12-year-old son, and his 12-year-old son just went, "How about a dragon?" And he was like, "That's brilliant. Space dragon. Let's go."
Tom King is great for getting ideas from his kids, which is pretty fucking hilarious. Although the sad thing about that is the reason Ruthie's name is Ruthie is that his niece is named Ruthie, and he didn't want to name Ruthie after one of his kids because he did that with Claire, and everyone hates Claire. Which is depressing. Because I love Claire. Claire is great.
Claire's pretty freaking good.
Cool. Yeah, we've reached that part of the episode.
I'm trying to think.
I mean, we're
like,
close to an hour in, so we can go for a couple more minutes certainly. But just letting you know, if we are reaching that point and it is getting closer to the wrap up point. So any final thoughts, any last things we really wanted to make sure we talked about? Now it's time to get them out there.
I mean, we barely touched on the villain.
I mean, because he's not really like much of a villain. Like he's more of just like an excuse to go on this journey. Like the impetus of things. Like he gets some cool moments, and he's interesting enough. But I think like for me at least the kind of defining moment of this character is, oh, we almost got him, but then he pulled out a magic trick, and now we've got a whole other issue of adventure. Like that's kind of
That's entirely
the
fair.
vibe of this villain, which is, it's fine, it works, and it serves the story. But I don't really think that like I think it would be a mistake to call this guy like a top villain of all time or anything like that.
That's entirely fair, but I do love how the last two issues spend a lot of time showing like just how much of a bastard and a psycho he really is, because you spend a lot of the book hearing about it, but in those moments where he's tied up to the tree and he's actually talking to Rufai and he's telling her about how her dad actually died and that it was like just a complete accident, but he went with it because he was he was just like slightly offended, and that led him on this spiral of like becoming a mass intergalactic murderer. And then in the final scene, Kara talks about his rehabilitation, and it really feels like this Tom King is saying like, look, this guy is one of the worst of the worst. He is a complete piece of shit, crazy bastard, but even he could be saved and made a better person by Supergirl because she was able to get him to a place where he could get that time and that closed offness from the rest of the universe he needed to become a better person.
And then fucking...
And then Rufai just kills him.
Does she kill...
No, she doesn't.
She just punches him in the face. She hits him really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
But
people got very
I like
confused
to
by
think
that.
she killed him.
I mean, you can have that, yeah, but I do think that would kind of defeat the purpose of the book. With the
Fair
ending,
enough.
like a lot of people got confused about that, and Tom King had to like clarify that a little bit. But like if you look at the pages at the end, like he lifts his hand up and he holds his hand and he lets it down. Like he's not dead; she just whacked him.
Yeah, which I think was interesting because like there is such a narrative around like, oh, be the bigger person, move past, forgive. Forgiveness is the greatest thing, and I'm like, I mean, you don't necessarily have to hold the grudge and go out for the fucking revenge quest, but like forgiving the person that killed a family member is kind of a big fucking ass. Can you just be like, can you still hate them but just like not do anything negative to them? Is that an acceptable fucking avenue? And this is like,
I think that's more.
yeah, no, this is totally
This
acceptable.
episode of Geeky Gentleman, Ian advocates for hating people quietly from a
Yeah,
distance.
no, for real. Like, if everyone could just do that, I think the world would be a better place. It's when everyone has to go do shit about it that's the problem.
It would certainly make social media a lot
Right?
better.
Like, oh man, this fucking asshole just like appeared in my mentions. Well, I guess I'll just ignore it. Like, imagine.
I really appreciate that as well, being in a Superman or like again, I'll just say super relative book, because I think those are often guilty of exactly what you're saying, Ian, where like you get so preachy, where like the victims start getting blamed for having negative feelings towards the people that killed the people they love and stuff. And like you can push the altruism so far to where there's an issue in the 90s where Lois Lane is dying and the only cure is in the Joker's blood, and for some reason like they have to kill the Joker and there's no like way of like getting a blood transfusion, so Superman and Batman just start crying and are like, well, I guess we have to let Lois Lane die. It's just like so fucking lame.
I'm sorry, that's absolutely insane.
I want that panel posted out of
Should
context.
be used the citation at the very least.
Yeah, like, right. But then they don't think of that. It's like you have to kill him or nothing. So like that's the most extreme example I can think of. But it's such a common trope, and I feel like it's something that really stops people wanting to believe in like the character without being reduced to just being like 3 years old, where like either Superman exists in a world where everything always ends well, or Superman can't exist at all, and that vice versa goes for Kara. I think Tom King does a really, really, really good job of being like, no, they're just really, really good people in the same world we live in. And so their responses to it may be better than ours some of the time, if not most of the time. But that doesn't mean they can solve every single thing, and that doesn't mean they don't get put under the extreme emotional situations and they'd break. They can always bend, they can always be tested like any compelling protagonist, but they're not limited to a very set of morality, and they're not going to lecture you about it. They're just going to encourage you to pick a better option, but you're not going to be seen as hell on earth for not forgiving a scumbag. Kara's going to be like, you do you, queen. I just make sure you're happy for you. That's her main
Yeah, I
priority.
mean,
I love that.
the drama between this and something like Superman Up in the Sky is ultimately just that Superman and Supergirl will always do whatever the right thing is, but doing the right thing is the thing that creates the problems. It's not the thing that almost always solves them. So you really get more of the drama and more of the emotional weight of something like this, because if they just refused to do the right thing, if they just kind of gave up, or if they compromised, the story would be over so much earlier, but that's just not who they are. And so you get on this elongated adventure because they refuse to change those principles. And that's not inherently a good thing. That just makes them good people.
Absolutely, yeah. So I definitely, I really like that we end this on a hopeful, happy note, but one that still has a little of a fuck you, dickhead to it. Like, I think that we need more of that energy in the super family of things. The willingness to say fuck you, but still be good people and not feel the need to lecture people about it.
It's also very like old school comic strippy, which I really like. Like that whole final little segment, that whole page is just kind of laid out like a vertical comic strip, which is really fun. And Tom King's a really big fan of Peanuts, and so that kind of makes sense that he would write as something that has that same sort of beat. But Peanuts, if you like go back and read those, are very depressing children's comics about weird existential angst and dreads and beliefs in God and stuff like that. And they have the same sort of like physical punchlines and stuff. So that whole last little bit where she just like punches him in the face and then he gets his arm up and the book is just over, that felt like a Peanut strip to me.
I could see that, yeah.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it. It was fun. I
Really
would
good book.
read
Top
maybe
five.
again sometime. You know, it's
Ian 5 out of 10 Harrington.
no. I mean, it's higher than that. It's just not greatest comic of all time to me. Is what it comes down to.
How do we feel about it in comparison to Superman Up in the Sky, just out of curiosity? Because I think it's
I've
better.
not read Superman Up in the Sky yet. I've got it, and it's just on that pile of things that I mean to read, and now I'm not reading comics, so you know.
So
Fair.
here's the thing about my fandom with Tom King. I like him so much that there have been books I have specifically skipped because I know they're going to be good, and I'm just saving them for a rainy day when I need a really good comic I've never read before. And Superman Up in the Sky is one of those.
Okay.
For me, I think this is better as well, Steve. I like
Okay.
Superman Up in the Sky a lot, but this is that's more like a really great collection of single issues, whereas this is just like a whole complete like masterpiece unto itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely sort of feels like Superman Up in the Sky is sort of the first draft of figuring out what you would do with a longer story, and that longer story is Supergirl.
Like the way I put it is like Tom King has still to make his definitive Clark Kent story, but this is definitely his definitive
He
Kara story.
keeps fucking asking for it, and it just does not happen.
Yeah.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
I will say, I
dream.
think some of what you might be picking up on is the context in which Up in the Sky came out as like that Walmart tie-in comic thing,
Right,
where it's like
right.
it's supposed to have a bit more mass appeal, and like there's it was something you got the distinct impression was being much more closely watched than a lot of his other things. Tom King and DC Editorial certainly have a long and lovely history together, but like that one, I always got the vibe of, yeah, but like this one's really important, Tom. You can't.
Oh no, That one is the exact opposite. Because you're right. You would think that the wider mass appeal Walmart book would have more eyes on it, but it was entirely the opposite. No one gave a shit about that book, and he could just do whatever he
That's
wanted.
so fucking funny. All right, whatever. Maybe Tom King works really good under restrictions then. I don't know. It's just fucking confusing.
He does. He definitely does. But no, like when that book was coming out, he would talk about like he would talk about it, and like people would ask him to hype it up. And he's like, I don't know if anyone fucking reads it.
I mean, in all fairness,
Well, clearly no one did because they're not doing those anymore.
like in all fairness, I went to go
Yeah.
look for those books and I couldn't find them. I got the first one and that
Yeah,
was
no,
it.
exactly.
So,
That was the problem.
like,
The only one I ever found was the Supergirl Batwoman one. And that's because I went to 4 Walmarts in the same day to try and find it because I wanted it because I'm a Supergirl collector.
I don't know. It was a good premise, but then apparently it was too good a premise because none of the stores ever had any of them. So,
Which is really funny too, because like now you look at like modern classic Batman and Superman stories, and Batman Universe and Superman Up in the Sky are up there. So everyone's buying the shit in trade, but no one fucking read it when it came out in Walmart.
well, no, everyone read it, Steve.
Most
That was the
modern
problem.
comic readers are. I think most modern comic readers are just more so trade readers than anything else these days.
I think most modern comic readers just don't read comics. Is the bigger
That
problem.
too.
See, I'll agree with you on that. We've made that joke a couple of times on No Prize. Nobody actually reads comics. They just post angrily about them on
Yep.
Twitter.
Yes,
But like,
exactly.
whenever I talk to people who I know for a fact are reading comics, it's always, oh, I discovered this through picking up the first trade, and I got recommended this, and I went and bought all the trades. It's never, this was on the rack Wednesday, and I decided to give it a chance.
Which is so boring to me, because like so much of what I like to read comes from just going to the store on Wednesday and being like, hey, this looks neat.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. People don't like reading comics. You know, people don't like having to engage with media. It's just...
You gotta come up with a way to fix
Well,
that.
okay, I think I've figured out how to fix it, and that is Poison Ivy is Barack Obama.
What?
No, not again. Not
It's
again.
an in-joke based on a really brain-dead Twitter post.
Oh my god. I have not been reading that miniseries, but now I'm going to just because everyone hates
Good.
it.
I got 3 issues in and dropped it. I couldn't.
I'm sure it's probably not particularly great. I don't love G. Willow Wilson, but if comics Twitter hates it, then I'm probably going to love it.
Dude, she's the fucking Aaron Paul of comics. She's still writing the goodwill of Miss Marvel, but everything she's done since then has been incredibly disappointed.
I didn't even really like Miss Marvel, to be honest.
I love her Miss Marvel.
I thought it was alright. I thought it was kind of it felt like it was coasting on its premise way too hard for too long.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I think that's the end of this episode. It's been like 10 minutes since we talked about the book itself, it seems. So I think we're gonna go ahead and call it there. Let's go ahead and do scores. I'll go first. Like I said, I did enjoy the book. I thought it was really well written. It was good to read some Tom King again. And he pulled at the right heartstrings for me. So, despite my negativity, I'm still giving this like a 4 out of 5 fucking green suns. That's so cool. Planet of the Green Sun. I'm in a weird place with this book where I like a lot of the things around it more than I like the actual deeper story elements itself, which I'm usually the other way around on Tom King, so, you know.
For me, I'm going to give this one 5 out of 5 Dreams of Krypton. I want to see more of Tom King's Dream of Krypton.
Oof. Yeah. I'll give it 5 out of 5 Comet the Super Horses. It's a very, very good book. I still would not put it in my top 5 Tom King, but that's just because Tom King is so fucking good that it's hard to even come up with a top 5 at this point.
5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, million out of million. I absolutely love this book. If you have not read it, please go read it. If I find out you haven't read it after I've said that to you, I'm going to buy you a copy and shove it in your face.
Nice. What's your 5 out of 5 though? You need a thing related to the series.
5 out of 5 space holocausts.
Okay, nice. Dark.
Speaking of dark and spooky,
Yes, next week is the beginning of Geeky Gentleman Horror Month. I'm probably gonna have to upload this episode on Friday so as not to step on that. And we might have to talk about recording a different episode later this week or something. But I wanted to make sure to get this episode down. We just had too many interruptions last couple weeks on Geeky Gentleman. So yeah, next week we'll be starting Geeky Gentleman Horror Month. We'll do a whole month reviewing horror movies and a special for Halloween discussing a topic. And I'm going to call dibs on the topic because I've got a really good one that I kind of want to talk to you guys about. So does anyone have a horror movie they want to kick us off with, either Steve or Alfie?
I've definitely got a few ideas. But Alfie, do you have one immediately?
No, I do not. If I asked Aaron, I'm probably sure, but Steve, I think you should pick the one first.
Okay, all right, yeah, no, I've always got horror movies that I'm down to make people watch with me. So, question real fast, just because you said you're gonna upload this on Friday, we might try to do something else for Sunday since it's October. Is there a specific day you were thinking now, just so I know whether or not this is gonna be a live pick or not?
I do not know. We'd have to just discuss it further.
Okay, all right. Then maybe this one can wait a week then, because I was gonna say we could do the Hellraiser reboot that's about to drop on Hulu, but that might not be out by the time we have to record. So instead, we'll do another horror movie that came out this year. Let's review The Black Phone that just came out somewhat recently. It's an Ethan Hawke movie. It's directed by Scott Dickerson. He's the guy that did Insidious. He did Doctor Strange. He's a pretty in his camp horror director, but this is apparently the first time he's made a movie that a lot of people have genuinely really loved. So I have not seen it yet. I'm kind of hyped about it because I've heard it was really good.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds great. Sounds good. Until next time, everyone. I'm the philosopher.
I'm the champion of the oppressed.
I'm
Say
the
it.
Tom King reader.
And I am wishing all things to everyone.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.